The maid got pregnant, but no one expected her to take the whole estate. He thought getting the maid pregnant would be the worst scandal his wealthy family had to bury, but he had no idea she was about to outsmart every single one of them and take the empire for herself. Our estate in Connecticut had stood for years, towering columns, a gated entrance that whispered, "You don't belong here," to anyone who wasn't born into money. I was the only son in my family. My life was tailor-made from birth. The prep school, the debutante balls, the legacy Ivy League degree I barely earned, and the seat my father saved for me on the board of Business Financial. I always knew I wasn't meant to lead. I liked art, music, and bourbon more than boardrooms. But when your father is way rich, the man who built half the financial backbone of New England, you don't get to choose. The staff rotated often, but I remember the exact day. Mariella walked through our door. She was 24, Venezuelan, soft-spoken, polite, hired as a maid by the head housekeeper. She had no references, just perfect posture and eyes that studied everything. She made no noise, never complained, and worked like someone who knew she had no safety net. But there was something about her, something sharp, something watching. I noticed her, but I didn't act not until one night when I came home drunk after my father humiliated me in front of the board. It was supposed to be one night. The kitchen was empty. She was washing dishes. I said something stupid. She laughed softly. 1 minute, I was pouring a drink. The next, we were in the laundry room with no clothes on. She said nothing the next morning. Neither did I, but then it happened again. And again it was dangerous, reckless, but for once, I felt something that didn't belong to my family, something real. 3 months later, she came to me pale and trembling. "James," she said, "I'm pregnant." I froze. Then I laughed because, what else do spoiled men do when faced with real consequences? "We'll take care of it," I said. "We'll figure something out." But Mariella didn't want money. She didn't want to disappear. "This baby is a Whitlock," she said, "and he deserves his name." I told my father. He laughed too. Then he called the lawyer. My mother nearly fainted. She locked herself in the parlor and refused to speak to me for 3 days. They offered Mariella $200,000 and a plane ticket. She said no. My father did what men like him do. He hired a PI. What he found was unsettling. Mariella had a degree in economics. She spoke Spanish, English, and French fluently. She was accepted into law school in Caracas before fleeing political turmoil. She wasn't a maid by skill. She was a maid by necessity. But no one saw the real threat. I don't know if I married her out of love or guilt. Maybe both. My parents were livid. The family lawyer refused to officiate, so we went to City Hall. Mariella wore a $40 white dress. I wore last year's suit. She didn't cry, neither did I. 3 months later, she gave birth to Nathaniel. My mother refused to hold him, but the will said, any male heir of James Whitlock Jr. shall inherit equal claim to the estate. And that was enough. Mariella didn't ask for anything, but she started listening. She asked about the trust. She asked about the voting shares. She started reading documents my father left lying around. When my drinking got worse, she took me to rehab. Told the lawyers I signed over medical power of attorney. I did. I don't remember, but that document would later let her sign on my behalf. She began moving assets, consolidating debts, rewriting staff contracts. Quietly, my father thought she was just playing house. She was playing chess. The Whitlock board had 12 seats. My father held 4. I held 3. The rest were family loyalists until Mariella dug into their secrets. One had unpaid taxes. One had a mistress. One was embezzling. She got 5 proxies to vote with her. At the next board meeting, my father walked in expecting applause. Instead, he got a motion to remove him as CEO. It passed. Mariella signed the termination papers. I watched it all from rehab. My father left the estate in silence. My mother tried to challenge the trust. Mariella hired better lawyers. The courts sided with the heir. Nathaniel's name was on the deed. Mariella became the face of Whitlock Financial. She rebranded, cleaned house, fired old cronies, brought in ethics committees, but it pressed adored her. From maid to mogul, the Latina who saved a corrupt dynasty. She gave scholarships, opened shelters, and she never let me fall. I got sober, I got better. I started painting again, but the empire was hers. Last Christmas, I asked her if she ever loved me. She smiled. I love that you let me choose my own future, even if you didn't know it. And then she walked to her son on her hip, a queen without a crown, ruling everything they once swore she'd never touch. 6 months after Mariella took over, a distant cousin named Everett tried to reclaim a seat on the board. He filed a lawsuit claiming Nathaniel was not a legitimate heir and demanded a paternity test. It was a desperate, vicious move. Mariella didn't flinch. She ordered the test. The result, 99.99% Whitlock blood. Everett slunk away, disgraced. But the damage lingered. Rumors swirled. The board was uneasy. Shareholders started asking questions. Mariella made a bold choice. She called a public shareholder meeting, and she brought Nathaniel, barely 3 years old, on stage. "This company belongs to my son," she said, "and it will be one he can be proud of." Standing ovation. It was around this time I began reading through some of the old records. Mariella had unearthed my father had secrets buried deeper than I ever imagined: illegal holdings, ghost accounts offshore, slush funds disguised as donations. She didn't just save the company, she'd scrubbed it clean. But there was one file marked private, password protected. She never mentioned it. I cracked it late one night. It was a letter from my father to Mariella dated 2 weeks before she took over. Mariella, you're not what I expected, but I see what you're doing and I respect it. My son was never going to lead, but maybe you can. You're smarter than anyone I've ever hired. Just one thing. Protect the name, protect the boy. That's all that matters. JW Sr. I sat there for hours rereading it. He knew he didn't just lose to her, he chose her. Today, Nathaniel is 8. He's kind, curious, speaks 3 languages, and plays violin like it's a second voice. Mariella doesn't talk much about the past. She doesn't have to. She teaches him humility, gratitude, power. Yes, but earned. The estate has changed too. Less sterile, more open, more color on the walls, painting some of mine even. The old guard is gone. The Whitlock legacy now has her fingerprints all over it. And I'm okay with that because in the end, she didn't steal it. She saved it. Just when everything felt calm, a mysterious lawyer contacted Mariella. He was from Argentina and carried a will from an old man named Emilio Santiago, a man Mariella had once worked for before coming to the USTHE. Will named Nathaniel as the secondary beneficiary to a trust worth over $60 million. Emilio had no heirs, and he wrote that Mariella was the only one who ever treated me like a man, not a monster. Suddenly, Mariella wasn't just queen of the Whitlocks. She was now managing international assets. The media exploded. The Maid turned queen inherits South American fortune. And for once, the Whitlocks weren't the richest name in their own home. Months after the Argentine inheritance went public, trouble stirred again, this time from within the Whitlock family tree. A woman named Charlotte Whitlock Hartley, my late uncle's daughter, surfaced with a venomous claim that the entire transfer of power was fraudulent, orchestrated through manipulation and deception. She demanded an independent audit of the Whitlock estate and filed for an emergency injunction against Mariella's control. Mariella didn't blink. Let her dig, she said. But the press had a field day. Headlines questioned Nathaniel's legitimacy again. Pundits painted Mariella as a gold digger. Protesters even picketed the estate. Until Charlotte made a fatal misstep, leaking falsified documents to the press. The forgery was caught by forensic analysts in under 48 hours. Charlotte was charged with fraud and defamation. Case dismissed. Reputation ruined. Mariella knew one thing: survival at the top required allies. She started grooming a circle of loyal professionals, former whistleblowers, outcast CEOs, women who'd been shut out of boardrooms for years. Together, they became a quiet powerhouse within Whitlock Financial. One of them, Dr. Elaine Morano, uncovered a long-buried scandal in the medical investments division, a cover-up of toxic products sold to low-income clinics. The board begged Mariella to suppress it. The story broke. Stock dropped 17% in a week. But 3 weeks later, the brand rebounded stronger. Investors admired the transparency. For the first time, Whitlock Financial ranked #1 in corporate ethics. It was a foggy Sunday morning when I saw him again, James Whitlock Sr., standing at the gates. Thinner, slower, but still imposing. Mariella let him in. He didn't speak to her at first. He only asked to see Nathaniel. They sat on the porch, the boy chatting like nothing ever happened. Later, he pulled Mariella aside. "You turned this house into something worthy," he said. "You did what I never could." They talked for hours. When he left, he handed her a worn envelope. Inside was a handwritten amendment to his will, leaving everything Stock's property, even his private art collection, to Nathaniel. He died 3 months later. Just when we thought the past was buried, a letter arrived addressed to Marie. No return address, inside a DNA test. Another Whitlock heir, a girl from a liaison my father had in the 80s. She wasn't asking for money, she wanted to meet her brother. Nathaniel agreed. They met at a quiet cafe in Boston. She was kind, humble, and fiercely intelligent. Mariella brought her into the fold not as a threat, but as family. Years have passed. Nathaniel now leads a youth investment program teaching financial literacy in underserved neighborhoods. He plays piano instead of violin, still speaks 3 languages, and he calls Mariella not just mum but mentor. The Whitlock name, once a symbol of greed and corruption, now funds scholarships, rebuilds schools, and powers sustainable energy ventures. And Mariella, she remains behind the curtain, still watching, still guiding, still the sharpest person in any room.